Gone live? I'm not sure. Dear members of Asian Literary Society and all those who have taken out time to be with us live today. It is an absolute pleasure to be a part of the Asian Literary Society as it celebrates its third Asian Literary Confluence. Though it's a virtual event due to the pandemic, but our founder, Mr. Manoj, has taken special care that this day be celebrated in all its glory. The spirits are high, and there are various interesting events lined up throughout the day. And now it is my honor to introduce Dr. Pariksith Singh, who agreed to grace the occasion. Dr. Singh needs no introduction. He recently was live with the ALS family for Navras 2020. And for those who are new to the platform, let me share with you that Dr. Singh is a founder of Access Healthcare Physicians in Florida. Apart from that, he is also an author of several books in the American healthcare domain. The poet in him successfully published books like The Shoreless River, Chutti Ke Din, Swayam Ka Ghuspatia, and many other books. He is a bilingual poet and very impressive at that. Dr. Singh started writing poetry at the age of 14 while simultaneously preparing to be a medical student. He has, I think, done immense justice to both, maintaining a very fine balance. I take the liberty to introduce Dr. Singh by calling him a doctor poet who has found a unique way of healing through his poetry. It's a very rare combination, and with a couple of lines from one of his poetries, I would like to hand over the platform to Dr. Singh. खुद को खाली करता जा रहा हूं मैं तुमसे भरने के लिए रिक्त को और रिक्त करता जा रहा हूं मैं पूर्ण करने के लिए. A warm welcome, Dr. Singh.
Thank you, Nisha ji. It's such an honor to be here with the Asian Literary Society. I think amazing work is being done here, and even though it seems low scale due to COVID, this is actually might enhance the platform in many ways because it's going to make it global by being digitized, and then there is no limit to who all can join the platform. So I'm very happy to see the growth of this platform, and I would love to, since this is a Navaratri, I would love to maybe start with a few poems on Mother, and then we can talk or whichever way you want.
Absolutely, sir. It will be an honor if you start because of the occasion of Navratri. We wait to hear from you, sir.
So this is a poem on the mother I wrote a long time ago. I wrote it in Hindi and English. Right now I have the English version. The title is Mother. Deep in her cells, she has borne me. In the seas mysterious to her, whose dark cradle rocks endlessly, lulling the soul to sleep. Out of the sea grows a sea, swell of the zero womb, but in that limbo, who shall say what grows in whom? And thus you appear even now, a sea beneath your eyes, dazed a little with that glow, and your reflection in the skies. So this was, I think, a good introduction as a human mother, but human mother is still a part of the universal mother, and she represents nature and earth in her physical form. And this one is on Mahakali. This may be a little more intense because the mother can take many forms, as we have described in Navaratra. So this is Mahakali. When the dark grows golden with mysterious light, the dark of midnight, and grows starless with overwhelming bliss, lit only by the moon on your forehead. I lay pressed down by the absolute nihil of your sweetness, my limbs in dread. All universe is unified by the onslaught of the one, the sword and the lotus, the bleeding head and the boon, and night and the light of your eyes grow synonymous.
My God, I had goosebumps, sir. I mean, it's so overwhelming to hear, two facets of one mother.
Yes,
So beautiful, sir. Beautiful. In fact, in my questions lined up for you, mother also features. So I think it is something we have, very clearly associate with. As a
yes,
human being, for us, mother is, everything.
yes.
So I think we can just. It was very overwhelming. I had tears in my eyes. Beautiful. Thank you, sir, for such a beautiful rendition of your poems. Now, I'd just like to ask you, Dr. Singh, that as a healthcare professional and very crucially required at this time, during the pandemic, did you take out time to write poetry? And if you did, how did you manage that?
So, this pandemic has really pushed us to the limits beyond ourselves.
Correct.
We had to stretch beyond our limited concerns, our narrow worldview that is centered towards me, and then suddenly see how our patients are dying, some of the doctors dying in our community. And even one of our staff member passed away. My friend passed away in Dubai. So suddenly gives you a vision that is much bigger than yourself. And you start realizing what is happening on a universal scale, on a grand scale, where we are just a wave on the ocean. And that has, one, it took away the fear of death that used to be always, a human affliction. Even though we are doctors, we are not supposed to be afraid. We are human. But seeing so much happen, and especially in cities like New York, Chicago, hospital beds were full. People were just throwing bodies away. And I'm told even in our own cities in India, we had some hospitals that we saw those situations. So suddenly you go beyond death. And that's why Mahakali becomes so important, because even though she strikes us hard on our head, there is a message to learn and change from it. So a lot of inspiration flowed from that realization. And I think once one starts moving away from oneself, creativity starts happening more easily. So it's no longer about me. Suddenly I realize what it means to be a doctor. And so, a heart felt compassion and empathy starts coming for all those in the community. And that is an easy, platform for writing poetry. Then it just flows. Last 6 months, it's been very natural, spontaneous. Poems have just flowed, and I have to try to keep almost every day. They just come out, and I've been writing, and then I try not to spam my friends too much, but I share with them. Once in a while, I put them on Facebook, and people seem to be appreciating them. So you're right. I mean, we are busy, but yet in that busyness, something has broken through, allowing us to be creative even through the destruction of death. Probably that's the mystery of life.
I think you just need time away from these thoughts, that keep overwhelming you. And,
Right.
just I think writing is the best form. I mean, I find solace in writing. When
Yes.
there's nothing that helps me, I just pour out my thoughts on paper. And I
Yes.
think that's the best way of doing it. And I think you should share it more often on your page because there are people who may not be able to express similarly, but they resonate with your thoughts. It would be wonderful if you have a platform where you share your thoughts and people will just read and they'll associate their own feelings with that. So,
Yeah. One has to be careful. We don't want to spam too much, but yeah, I'm happy to share and
yes,
like,
sir.
Yeah.
We look forward to reading more of you, because I went through your Facebook profile, and when I read those, I mean, they were very different from what I write personally. But it was good to read something different and something which is very relevant in today's time, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can read another poem, a
Yes, please.
Hindi, English poem on mother. Then maybe if you want, we can try some Hindi poems.
No, mother will be anything that you think is relevant to
Okay.
today, please, sir.
So this is another mother poem, or mother in her vast sense. I sat still as the sea sang in my marrow, with countless hum of tongues. White rollers swept through brain, and tides were only a heave at the resound of her name. Saline fragrances filled my lungs and nostrils. The sea became my thought and dream, each fancy and whim. As a womb that completes the outside and within, the ocean with its roll was a vast heartbeat. At the beach, it barely tickled my toes until I lay upon the sand and buried my face in luminous grain. The curls and foam began to seep through fingertips and feet, overflowed artery and vein, with silence gone inaudible and unbearably shrill. My heart expanded beyond its shoal to the vast throb of her view. Horizons turned into looming crests of unfathomable Indian blue. Her night filled each pulse of artery, and when the waves grew still, the embryo grew into wider whole, with each deluge of Nihil. Slabs of lime rock float over a fluid expanse, the foundation of boulders waving and shifting. The sea underneath with hushed tones of crash and spray, below the openings of crust, and all I need to do now is grow unbelievably still and let the ocean move as is its wont, as is its will.
Another beautiful one, sir. I think I was
Thank
right in calling you Dr. Poet because you balanced it so well. You have merged the two extreme diverse professions into one, sir. Very beautiful.
Thank you.
Sir, I'd just like to know, seeing you write, I would like to know, do you think poetry can be taught? Does it flow naturally, or it is inherent? So, what do you have? What do you have to say to this?
So each of us is a poet in essence. As a child, you will see children think in metaphors. Children don't separate the world from themselves, they connect one and two, and that's called magical thinking. Unfortunately, our education messes them up, and then they start breaking things down and dividing things, and suddenly the world that was mysterious, magical, with the presence of the mother who's always there, suddenly it starts breaking, gets fractured. But I think it can be recovered if we start dropping away the thought processes, the habits. And biggest problem is the child's way of looking. The innocence is covered. We are told to look at things in a certain way. So, for example, this is a finger. This is a finger. Now, the looking stops. When the child looks at the finger, he doesn't know what it is. He's totally mystified. What is this? And he's looking at it for the first time. And that is in an state of awe and mystery. He is suddenly exploring that. Now, that is really where our poetry should be coming, that mystery. Problem is we start defining things and we make it so clear. Oh, this is a finger. Now he cannot even look at it. He just says this is a finger. Stops looking. So if we can drop the habit of putting tags on everything and learn how to look fresh like a child, I think we can discover our inner poet. That is more important. Technique will come later. Technique is less important. The feeling, as Wilfred Owen used to say, the poetry is in the pity, is in the feeling. He said, it doesn't matter what technique you have. If you have the feeling, that's poetry. So then you can have great poets like Shakespeare, and you can have simple poets who write in their room and don't share it with anyone. But the connection to the mysterious, the unknown, the beautiful of aspect of the universe, once that is built, I think that poet in us is awakened. So yeah, I think we all have a poet. We just keep it buried, and we are too shy. That's the problem.
Absolutely, sir.
We've
Absolutely.
been,
People will judge us,
yeah,
We fear the judgment. That's true.
yeah,
Why I asked you this question was because I have never learned poetry and I write, and sometimes I question myself. I mean, am I doing justice? But because we have platforms now to share. Otherwise, we have filled diaries as children, written in our diaries, and they are buried deep inside
yes,
some corner. But now, since we have got many writing platforms, so we started sharing, and
yes.
appreciation also pours in, suggestions pour in. So I think we should be open to that. What do you
I
say about
agree.
this?
I agree totally. Because you see, our media, mass media, used to be very much controlled, as we are aware, by very few concentrated centers of power. And the normal person, the garden variety people like you and I, are not allowed any expression. That has been taken away. We can go on Twitter, we can go on Facebook and put our thoughts, hopefully, our poetry, and we don't need to have some literary journal approve it, some editor sitting there and saying, okay, no, I approve it, I don't like it. It's out, and now let's see what others feel. And that's how we learn. The fear of sharing oneself, one's feelings, is comes again from our education system, which is based on ambition, fear, and greed. And we hide ourselves because we want to show others in a certain way. We created a certain persona. But if we can just learn to be ourselves and in our poetry be who we are, then I think real poetry can happen just by that authenticity.
Very well, very true, sir. On that note, sir, another poetry from you.
Yeah,
For-
this one, this one is a personal favorite. It was poet Wallace Stevens in the US who had written something about his mother. His line, then I adopted. I think his line was, whose face fills the room, her presence. So this is, he's describing his mother, and her face is always there in the room. He's describing her, even though she's not there physically. So this is for Wallace Stevens, whose face fills the room and is not seen. But in each book or pad or pen is her single look, whose name makes all things shine and colors intimate, each surface a mirror of indwelling face with closed eyes. This body, this feel of molten gold, as a fetus in verse floating, each letter absolute and incomplete, each line an end and infinite, along a silver stream of innumerable sun, helplessly another, in a dissolve of bliss, a fluid expanse, the foundation of boulders waving and shifting, the sea underneath with hushed tones, As in a sonogram, a crest of sound, the Doppler throb with self as artifact. I am seen and held in a presence, inseparable from mine, the constant gaze of inner look, the encompass of ocean, wherein I swim, horizonless, each limb a wave, each kick a wholesome fill, a liquefaction of sound. So the presence of mother is constantly here with us.
Correct.
Everything you, if you pay attention, she's always there with you. The experience of the womb, we may not remember it mentally, but somewhere inside we still carry that oneness with her, is
Absolutely.
complete unity and complete protection. And so this is Wallace had a beautiful way of expressing it, and that's what I.
A whole line in itself, sir. It was
Yeah.
beautiful, and you've done, I think, full justice to it. Because a mother's love always envelops us, whether she's there physically
Yes.
or not, but she's there, so that we find
Yeah.
that emotion, really connection with her. Right. Sir, hearing you out, I want to know: do you ever follow, basic rules of poetry? There are
Yes.
basic rules. Sometimes we overlook them, sometimes we follow them. But do you keep those elements in mind while writing, or you just go free flow?
So initially it was a lot of training
Hmm.
because I've been writing almost more than 3.5 decades. So initially, of course, you read the how the art of versification, how do you manage the idioms, the symbolism, the metaphor. You learn all that personification. Slowly, you start dropping it and then just start flowing with it. And the best poetry comes when one removes oneself and then the words just start flowing out without the what perhaps Krishnamurti would call the experiencer and the experience. The duality is always there between me and the world. When that duality starts going away, I think words start coming up which carry a new vibe. Especially if mother, the reason mother is so beautiful is because that separation of me and the world is bridged in her. That's where we sprang from, and there was no separation at that time. Then it came as a separation. But if we pay attention, then she's still with us. And that's what
Yes.
the Hindus meant when they called, you know, Mahashakti. Her presence is constantly there protecting us, taking care of us, even though it looks like we are out of the womb. So her womb is always here. We just have to pay attention, and her protection is always here. So technique starts going away after a while, and the best technique comes when it's natural. If you start creating lines based on technique, then it becomes artificial. Best to be yourself, uh, even if it's not a sonnet or not a lyric. It's fine if it's unrhymed. Rhythm is not the quantitative hexameter. It's okay, but the fusion of feeling and form, if that can happen, then poetry has happened.
It's a very
So
strong line you said, sir. It really makes a lot of sense because sometimes you question yourself, when you're writing, am I doing justice to it? But I think that sums up the entire thing, that you just write.
yeah, so you will see in Sanskrit poetry, sound um, is very important because sound is its own meaning. In Sanskrit, you have bija mantras. So if you say a word like this the beat sound, that has its own meaning, like dhairya, dhiraj, dharma. So that which holds things together. Ma is again ma, which actually goes through in several languages: mother, matrix, alma mater. So the sound has its own meaning. So if we can capture the sound as the baseline of the meaning, not only the each sound, each beej word, but how it comes together in the overall rhythm, and then the ucharan, how we read it. So if that can be done right, then the poetry becomes an experience.
On that note, we'll have another one from you, sir.
All right, so I'll do another mother's poem. Your face is the night sky, as a crystal in the dark, it glows without light. The closer you are, the more distant, and the farther you appear, the nearer your descent. Rays gather into your stars as intimations of deepening silence, as if a transparent profile of mind without movement, without color, has more allure. And your poise, with hands still gathered in the lap, is more breathless and demure, with fingers of light. I reach for your cheeks, only to vanish once more, as if the womb were only your constant embrace everywhere, my farthest seeking, a conceit of stratosphere in limitless sky. So I think this is just to see different faces of the mother and just the sky, the sea, the night, death itself, because suddenly you're returning back to that oneness. These are all various, and we in India were never afraid of the Vikral roop of the mother,
Correct.
right? We don't just say, okay, she's all nice, right? She's
Yes,
all nicey nice and like God the Lamb, right? She's all here only to suffer eternally. No, she can also be Vibhats, and she can also beat the errant children back into line with one smite. And she's also the greatest protector as Mahakali. So we have worshipped not only the gentle aspect, Mahasaraswati, the vast aspect, Maheshwari, or the opulent aspect, or the one with the blessings as Mahalakshmi. But we also took Mahakali and her different forms as Durga, Chandika,
yes, absolutely.
Avani, and we have no fear that takes away the fear of death, and we love even her beatings because we know she's making us better. She's improving us, just like a mother brings her children back in line.
There's an evil which is being taken away by this facet of mother.
Yes, yes.
So
And so,
absolutely,
Mahakali, even the Vibhats form, people say, how can you have such a depiction? This depiction has a truth to it because God is not just the lamb, God is also the tiger, as Christologically they say. So you will, when you annoy the mother, she'll come in a very aggressive form. And so our tradition, the Shaktas have always worshipped her and have welcomed her strikes. So that because whatever she does is out of love and will make the yogi or the sadhak or the lover better. And that is the mystery of our culture. We have taken God as Shiva and God as Rudra, and both aspects make even our concept of God complete. So,
I,
if you want, I can do a Hindi poem if that helps,
of
or
course,
we can
definitely.
continue.
We have an audience who would love to listen to you in Hindi also.
Okay. So, this is this just flowed, and I didn't try to create, as you said earlier, the form. The problem with, and this is a challenge that I have not fully mastered yet in Hindi, is how can I flow freely yet create a form that is its own, has its own unity with the feeling. I think, I tried it without any focus on lay or tal or yati or gati, and then see if it came out. सो रक्त की स्याही। साहित्य का ध्येय रक्त को स्याही में परिवर्तित करना है। T.S. Eliot said that the goal of literature is to turn blood into ink. So that's my attempt to write a Hindi poem. यह स्याही नहीं, रक्त है, जो रगों में दौड़ता फिरता आज पन्ने पर रिसने लगा है। लहू के अक्षर जिन्हें लय और ताल का पहले से ही अभ्यास है और जिन्हें यति और गति से धड़कने की भी चाह नहीं। हाँ, अलंकार अवश्य इनका रंग है, अनुप्रास की क्या आवश्यकता है इन्हें, जब आंसू इनका छिपा रूपक हो और पत्थर तोड़ना भूला हुआ यथार्थवाद। किंतु मैं ही तो आंसुओं की दवात में कलम डुबोकर पृष्ठ पर इन्हें उतारने की धृष्टता कर सकता हूं, वरना तो इस कविता को सीधे चेहरों पर पढ़ा जा सकता है। धूल और कोयले से सने मुखौटों पर गीली दो लकीरें जो आंखों से रिश्ते आंसुओं की राह दिखाती हैं, उनके सामने क्या कविता और क्या रक्त। काव्य की धड़कन जो इनकी भूख है और लकीरों से खींची हुई रगें जो उनके माथे पर खुरची हुई नाखूनों की पाश्विक पहचाने हैं, बस उसी कविता को उतारने की चाह है। और कभी कागज के टिश्यू से उन आंसुओं को पोंछ सकूं तो काव्य का ध्येय भी समझो पूरा हो जाए। स्याही पुनः रक्त सी हृदय की धड़कनों से भर जाए और मैं रक्त की स्याही नहीं रोशनी कर दूं।
Amazing, sir. How just your writing can, change the entire thing. Very beautiful, sir. I think we'll have time for another one.
Yeah, if you want, I can do another Hindi poem. And this is a little take on what D.H. Lawrence said.
Yes, sir.
So we talked about blood to ink.
Mhm.
Now we talk about ink to blood.
Oh my God,
So
amazing.
स्याही से रक्त, right? साहित्य वह है जो तुम्हारा लहू बदल दे. This was D.H. Lawrence said that. Literature is that which changes your blood. You read it, your blood is changed. You're just different after that. कैसे बदल दूं उसे जो तुम्हारे भीतर पहले से ही अनायास कविता बन बह रहा है, जिसमें बहाव भी है, इंगन भी, और श्रृंगार भी कैसा है सिंदूरी लाल। उस लहू से अधिक सौंदर्य तो अग्नि या प्रकाश की लहरों में ही दिख पाए, अन्यथा रक्त के रक्त में परिवर्तन का थक्का चाहे कितना ही गठिल और या घना क्यों न हो, उसे बदलना ही है तो केवल धमनियों तक कैसे, मज्जा तक, या उससे भी गहरे उतर मौन को फिर से कैसे अनहद कर दूं। प्रत्येक कोश में एक लौ अथवा सूर्य की किरणें उजगाएं, या सभी अणु सत्य में इतने मग्न हो जाएं कि हर कण सूर्य ही सूर्य प्रस्फुटित होने लगें। उन्हीं में तुम यदि बच पाओ कहीं तो पहचान लो, जिस महाकाव्य को लिखने का दशकों से संघर्ष कर रहे हो वो तुम ही हो। जिस मल्हार से निरंतर पराजित हो रहे हो वो भी तुम ही हो। जो शब्द राग इन धड़कनों में उठा रहे हो यमन षड्ज से निस्वर, और बांसुरी की सांसें अनथक, और वीणा पर गुंजायमान जलदरंग या शहनाई, सितार की तरंग से अंतरंग, तबले की ताल पर थक थक धम धम, और वहीं तुम उठते सुबह के भैरव, जब गत की तीव्रता में शिथिल चित्त हो जाओ, स्वयं की जुगलबंदी का उत्कर्ष पार ऐसे सरहद कर दूं तो समझ लेना जो लिखा नहीं, गुनगुनाया नहीं, किंतु उस आत्म मंत्र को फिर भी गुन लिया अनसुने, वही सत्य है कदाचित, जो रुधिर रूपांतरित कर दे। तो समझ लेना जो लिखा नहीं, गुनगुनाया नहीं, किंतु उस आत्म मंत्र को फिर भी गुन लिया अनसुने, वही सत्य है कदाचित।
Amazing, sir. I just want to say that I think whatever poetry you're writing, there's a lot of Indian flavor in that. And especially when you were writing about Radha, I read a few of them. So, somewhere deep inside you, do you miss your country? And do you feel your expressions would have been, more enriched if you were in your homeland? So that is, I think, one last question I want to ask you before we want to say bye to our audience.
I think I'm very deeply in touch with, in love with India, Bharat, all the beautiful things, everything I am is from my motherland, and it comes constantly. I do go back. It's only because of COVID. Last 7 months, I have not been there. So balancing being a doctor and being, a child of Bharat. But even here, I feel our tradition, our culture, and nowadays it's so close. You can feel it. India has become kind of cosmopolitan. It's spreading. I don't feel sometimes in Tampa, I feel like I'm back in India. A lot of Indians around. So it helps us. But as Indians, then we have more responsibility and something deeper to carry. And I think whether I'm here or in India, if I can carry that love, then, the motherland will take care of everything.
And so just a few lines about Radha and then one last question.
Yeah. So Radhaji is not a person. Radhaji is an avatar of our soul. She teaches us how to love the divine with complete trust, self-giving, complete surrender. So in that sense, I wrote these poems. So they're as much about me as Radhaji. I'm trying to learn from her how to surrender and be open to the divine. Radha's Geet. I am broken into the whole, the shattered crystal smashed into smithereens with an arch of brow, dropping one by one the discarded selves and screens with whom I marionette our dream askance and eyes of half moon. They fall as we pirouette about the axis of joined hands in each puppet, until the ritual disappears with the dancer and the dance, motionless with new body that once rejected fills the role, and the quiet destruction of the whole. Dying, Krishna dying into a single identity. So this was one expression. I don't know if you have time, but I think we can call it.
Yes, I think just a final few precious words from you, sir. It has been so lovely to hear from you and to listen to you. And just a few words to our audience before we wind up.
Well, we appreciate you. Thank you. And we constantly learn from each other. Please give the feedback, critique things you like, things you don't. And that's how we learn. We take your feedback and get better. And this is an amazing platform that has been created. I'm so proud to be a part of it. And I hope it keeps growing and expanding, and we will do our best to continue growing it. Thank you.
And we look forward to having you again on the platform. And I'm sure Manoj will ensure he does. And for me personally, it has been a very enriching experience, sir. And I'm
Thank
taking
you.
so much from you, sir, today.
Thank you, Nishaji. Have a
And
good one.
you too, sir. So thank you very much.